Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the football experience. We have today Happy Caleb and
Happier. Yeah.
Happy Caleb, and I don't know. I think I've had a. I think I'm in that stage where I thought I calmed down because of what happened, and then as more news sort of surfaces, it just winds me up even more and brings back the anger from what happened over the weekend. Have you had that?
Yeah, I'm sure I have.
Yeah,
I'm sure I have.
you think you're over it, and then the more you think about it, you're like it just pisses you off even more than what you originally were pissed off. And you know what? That's actually let's start off with that, since that was pretty much that all occurred on Saturday, so that was the opening fixtures. So we'll have our say on it, and you know what?
We're not doing Happy Caleb after the whole build up, and we don't get Happy B.
We'll get it. We'll get it after we get.
Go on. Let's go chronological.
Yeah, we're chronological. We'll get everything out. We'll get all the bad stuff out of the way, and then we'll dive into the good stuff, I guess. But you know what? It wasn't just Arsenal that was on the receiving end of. It wasn't VAR. It was human incompetence, and I think that's the reason why this pisses me off even more, and why it pisses off everyone even more, is because if VAR didn't exist, it's okay. Actually, if VAR didn't exist, Brighton's goal would have stood, because I don't think the linesman flagged that. I think that was VAR that flagged it, and they got it wrong. But Arsenal's one, it would have stood. So it's all right, fair enough. It's a mistake by the linesman. There's no VAR to check it. It's just one of those classic sort of things where sometimes the linesman gets offside, sometimes he doesn't. Whatever, it happens. You're not as pissed off. But because the fact that now we have this technology that's meant to basically eliminate, or pretty much, I'd say eliminate human error, especially on these black and white decisions where it's not subjective. And they still get it wrong. They still stuff up. I think it's completely egregious that when that occurs, and the fact that now that you have VAR to help, you pretty much have, by the end of the season, Arsenal, for instance, could be looking back at this and saying we lost the title based on this decision. If it happens that way, I know there's still 16 games to play. But it is one of those things where you could look back on it and say it's one of those ones that cost the team the title, actual incompetence.
Coming out with it early. Does someone seem a bit nervous ahead of what's going to happen in midweek?
I'm not.
I don't know.
I get
your
but
point. If you want to go into the discussion of VAR, my main takeaway by everything you've just said, get rid of VAR. Just get rid of it. It's changed the game for the worse, and there is still human error. So what are we doing? Let's just live with the human error that we had before.
And there's human error on black and white decisions because some idiot didn't check to draw the lines, and I don't get it. The player that's assisting the ball, they always check if he's offside. Not just the player that scored the goal. So I don't get why he wasn't checked. They were doing some check on the initial free kick that Brentford had a player that was in an offside position blocking a defender, and apparently Arteta was saying that the referees, at those referee meetings and whatnot with the coaches and the captains, they say those instances will be called for offside, regardless of whether it's I don't think he was directly affecting the vicinity of the ball, but those instances will be called offside because you're still affecting the defensive line and whatnot. So firstly, that one's not called when referees apparently behind closed doors in those meetings, they're saying that they will be called. And then secondly, the one that's clearly black and white, where it's not subjective, you're stuffing that one up. It's completely egregious, and either get rid of it completely and just go back to classic, and we can then talk about bad refereeing decisions like after the fact, and be like, okay, whatever, it's human error. But when you have technology and you're getting human error on technology, that's unforgivable in my eyes.
Yeah, I've almost trained myself to watch football with like a moral compass on what it should be. So in this instance, like you were talking about in the first place, I looked at both instances and I'm like, yeah, you could give a foul for the block off, and yeah, you could give offside for the assist without VAR, obviously. But both of them, would you be up in arms if VAR didn't exist? And I don't think you would be. It's not clear and obvious.
I wouldn't have been.
Exactly. Neither of those instances are clear and obvious errors. So that's what VAR should be. It even has it in the word when it came in. Clear and obvious. If you look at replays for more than 30 seconds and you can't see an offence, it's not clear and obvious. So why are we looking at every little thing through VAR? Just clear and obvious. Let's go back to just letting referees referee the game. It's ridiculous. It's just insane.
But hang on. The actual offside where I think it was Norgard, where he played the assist. That wasn't clear. That was clear and obvious. Like, he was offside by at least a foot. But like when you have a look at the replays, like, it's not some like toenail offside. Like, this is like it's clear offside.
And obvious by the new standards set by these lines. But I'm talking about if you just watch replays.
Look, I'm talking about
just one off.
No, yeah, but they showed the replay. I'm like, that looks offside. Like, this would take like 10 seconds to draw the lines.
Your problem with those goalmouth ones is you need like the perfect angle, as we've seen now.
Yeah,
because otherwise it's just like, well, if we got this angle, it could look like he's offside.
Well, they actually like the PGMOL. They actually admitted that they screwed up. Like, they said,
yeah, of course. This one's obvious.
So yeah, but I know what you're saying. Like, if VAR didn't exist, and I'm agreeing with that. If VAR didn't exist, and if the linesman didn't pick up on it, because there was like 20 players in the box or 18 players in the box all up. There's commotion. It's hard to really pick up. If the linesman doesn't get it on the day, fair enough.
I'm also saying if it existed in this world where you only had 30 seconds to look at it, I think in 30 seconds you wouldn't find a clear and obvious error.
I think you would
in that thing, in the whole thing.
You do.
You might with the offside. The offside does look it, but then like my thing is you can't take longer. You can't see something and go, well, he might be offside there. We need to look at that further. For me, it has to be no. You look at the whole thing. 30 seconds. That's all you got. If you couldn't find anything, it's not clear and obvious. But there's nothing egregious if you didn't see it.
But they always check. They always check the assist, the player that played the assist as well. They always check that.
Yeah, but we're of course talking about VAR as it is now, and that of course that is.
But then you have the Brighton one where it's pretty much a replay of the Juventus offside where they drew the offside line off the wrong Crystal Palace defender.
Yeah.
So
the most egregious is still Salernitana Juve. It's still the most egregious. Nothing will top that this season.
I think this one might be more egregious because it's literally like both players are inside the box, one next to each other. So it's not like one player hiding in the corner flag like the Juventus one. Like that one, it's like, okay, he's all the way over there, like off screen. This is like there's two defenders literally next to each other in the box, and you're drawing it off the wrong defender. Like, what the hell? And then obviously we have the Chelsea West Ham one. I didn't see that one, but apparently it was like an egregious handball. However, I've heard the pushback on that where it's more subjective because like the players like falling or whatever. Like,
yeah, and you know what brought that to light? The Bentancur one in the World Cup, where Portugal got the penalty against Uruguay, and it ultimately cost Uruguay their place in the last 16 because of goal difference. So, yeah, I thought that one got scrutinized, and then it was explained if a player's like going down and trying to like use their hand against the ground to stop their fall, it can't be given. So I think that one, but it did look like a save. It was a good save, to be fair. Going low to his left-hand side.
I need to have a look at it, but like I've heard that it was a really good save. And speaking of Bentancur,
Yeah, man. Oof.
Well, ruptured ACL. Was that during the
No
game?
good. Yeah, during the game.
Yeah.
It wasn't
So
good. You saw the anguish on his face, and Bentancur's not the type to I forgot the word. It's too early in the morning, but anyway,
wince.
that's wince. I was gonna say like elaborate the contact or what over exaggerate, I
Yeah.
guess. But anyway, it's a terrible day for Tottenham in terms of that. But I think we should stick on the Arsenal because the Arsenal game was fascinating. And my question is, with everything set aside, did Arsenal do enough to win that game anyway?
You know what? Brentford came with an excellent game plan. They saw what Everton did, and
Ooh, and I asked you
Yeah.
that after the Everton game. And the interesting thing, before you go, we said that Brentford were the team probably in the league who were the most equipped to execute the Everton game plan straight after Everton had. So it was interesting how it panned out. But yeah, go on.
but they didn't really execute it to the same intensity that
Well, they were away as well.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Yeah.
So, but they pretty much took notes and they adjusted it to their personnel because they probably don't have the midfield personnel to quite copy the game plan, but they can present something similar. And the whole time I was watching it, I was just feeling like Arsenal playing they're playing slow and they're playing more like a team that seems like the form is dipping. Like Martinelli seems a step off the pace, Saka seems a step off the pace, and Nketiah's dropped off from his goal scoring form from a couple of weeks ago. Everyone just seems a little bit as if it's almost as if they you know when we used to play on like really crappy fields that were like waterlogged and muddy, and then your boots would like just be clogged with mud, and then it would be really hard to like get a grip of the pitch, and it would be really hard to sort of take off, stop, and whatnot. You'd feel that little bit slower, that 5 or 10% slower. That's what it felt like watching them this weekend. Like they just. And they're sort of slightly taking liberties in defense as well. Like on a couple of occasions, they're trying to take an extra touch or two and try to play an extra pass or two to play out from the back when they don't have to, when they should just clear the ball. And they got caught once or twice as well. One was like almost a clear chance that Brentford got as well from it. So yeah, it's just I'm hoping that it's just like. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to really explain it, but it just feels like the levels have slightly dropped off, which is strange because they're not playing 2 fixtures a week. They're playing 1 fixture a week. They're going to start playing 2 fixtures a week now in February.
Yeah. I don't think it's strange though. To be fair, I think it's winter football. I think we said it when we got into this point of the season, and also. If you want to compare Arsenal to other teams around the league, no one's really flying except maybe you could put United in that category, who are kind of flying, but City certainly aren't. Newcastle have dropped off a little bit in recent times. So, the thing is, I don't find it strange. As we said, circumstances have kind of conspired against them in the last 2 weeks in terms of playing new manager Everton at Goodison. That's a bit of a killer fixture. And then getting a team who are, like we keep saying, well equipped to play that game plan, not necessarily the same system or the same way. And it was an interesting tactical battle, this game. It was really, really fascinating to watch. But I totally agree with the overall point of Arsenal looking, probably 5%, like you said, after the Goodison game. Arsenal playing at 95, 5 to 10% off. A little bit, like I say, not concerning, I guess, is why I'm saying it's not strange. It's not concerning, but it's also not strange because of the guy you have up front. He's done a fantastic job to this point, and he wasn't bad in this game, but he is getting chances that he's not finishing now. And these chances are big chances now because these games are tight. And when you play at 90 to 95%, but here's the point though, because the bigger point is Jesus isn't going to fix that because he's not really a goal-scoring striker himself. But what he does fix is the intensity and the tempo in the press. And you guys are missing the pressing forward that Jesus is. because I think in games, particularly probably the last 2 weeks, we've seen Arsenal sort of play more in the mid block against the ball. They're not able to win the ball back straight away. And it's just allowing teams like Brentford and Everton to at least get their head up and play those direct passes, but accurately. And when they can do that, then it's 1v1 against Gabriel and Saliba. And they've been fantastic this season. But we all know my views on Gabriel always has a mistake in him. And then as well, you're pulling Saliba and Gabriel out wide. So now there's runners coming through the midfield, and Brentford did this all game, particularly in the 5-3-2. They always wanted Mbuemo and Tony sort of in the pockets, just around Partey, so that they could help in the press and help get behind the ball. But when the ball was won back, they could spin off and play behind Zinchenko and White and go 1v1 against the centre-backs. And I felt that was how they got out. But to the point, if Arsenal are allowing them to at least get their heads up, then they're getting out. Whereas earlier in the season, I thought Arsenal was so suffocating in that counter press with Jesus up front. Like you couldn't get your head up. It was just like, what are we going to do? And then everyone was just descended upon you, and they contained the ball so well. We're just starting to see with that extra 5 or 10% drop off maybe through winter that they can't quite sustain that, and particularly with the guy up front. But it mustn't be long now before Jesus is nearly back, surely. Like
start of next month, I believe.
But he is still in month.
Yeah.
So it is a bit of a white knuckle. Do you play City twice in that span?
I don't think so. I think we play the middle of next month. But
you know what's just before you go on, you know what's crazy now? And we'll talk about it later, but this midweek game now, City can go to the top of the table.
Yeah.
After all of this Arsenal love.
But you know what?
City hate. Yeah.
You know what? On the Jesus point, like what I also came to mind was the fact that we've played 2 teams now in a row that are happy to play in a low block, and Jesus would have been much more suited to play against that style of defense because he's able to play in those tight spaces. He's able to link up better with Martinelli and with Xhaka. Especially, he seemed to favour that side more when he was playing rather than Odegaard and Saka's side. But we've lost that interplay now between those 3 or those 4 players now, between like Jesus, Odegaard, Jesus, Martinelli, Jesus, and Xhaka. And that would have been perfect to at least offer a different option to unlock these 2 defenses. Whereas like we couldn't unlock it at all. It seemed like we didn't have, like we were putting crosses in, but this is one where Patrick Schick as well would have been good to get on the end of those crosses, to have him as a plan B. Because we were putting crosses in numerous times, but there was just no one on the end of it. But yeah, also like we couldn't go through the middle like the way that we would have if we had Jesus.
Yeah, and Brentford was supremely well organised at the edge of their own box.
So were Everton.
I thought Arsenal in this game were not giving themselves the spaces to do anything against against that block that Brentford set up. So like I thought Zinchenko and White were too high at times, and it was maybe just be a bit more patient, sit off a little bit, help your defence a bit more, and let's see if we can entice the Brentford midfield just to come out 3 or 4 yards, so that Odegaard might pick up a ball in between the lines, or Saka might drift in, or Martinelli might drift in, and because Arsenal do it so well with the wingers in terms of their touchline wide, and if someone comes close to them, they'll make sort of a run in behind the midfield to pick up the ball, and then just be driving at the heart of the defence. And Brentford were good, and it would have been a question whether Brentford even came out of that shape if Arsenal did try to do that, but they never really tried to do it. It was maybe just, I'm not going to say it's like super desperate or anything, but it was maybe a tad desperate in terms of Arsenal just pushing. But you can understand that at home. So I just thought maybe that was something they could have looked to do. But apart from that, I thought on the original question, they could have won the game. But I think we'd be lying if they said they like if we thought that they couldn't have also lost the game as well, because I thought Brentford had some presentable chances.
Yeah, that Ivan Toney miss where he hit the upright.
Yeah. So yeah, this the title race is interesting now, and this grind
You know,
goes on. Where do you? Yeah, go on.
just
Do you want to
well,
wrap up
no,
on
no,
this?
I'll wrap
Yeah.
it. I'll wrap it up on this point. You know how I've talked in the past that like when you look at the head-to-heads against certain teams and where you're picking up points. So, for instance, like last year we picked up 3 points against Tottenham. This year we picked up 6 points against Tottenham. We've gone even compared to last year against United. Liverpool, we picked up 3 points, still another 3 points up for grabs, but last year we picked up 0. Against Brentford this year, so we've played them twice, we picked up 4 points out of 6. City have actually lost to Brentford and at home as well. So the maximum they can pick up against Brentford is 3, and that's away at Brentford that they need to get those 3 points. So City could pick up 1 point, 3 points, or 0 points against Brentford, where we've already locked in 4. So we've already picked up more points against Brentford than what City can pick up against them. So if we start to look at those sort of head-to-heads against other teams, then that's where you can probably start to say that who's in the better position, I suppose, to I guess close it out. But
Are we doing this now? Should we touch on
well,
City and then just preview the big one?
yeah, let's get into it.
And I don't know. The City's game, sort of just reeked to me like Pep. Pep sort of after last week, he doubled down. He did the old double down, but it's almost like he said to his assistants, "Fuck it, we don't even need a left back. We're just not going to play with a left back. We've sent João Cancelo away. We tried Rico Lewis last week. Fuck it, we're just not playing one." And it was crazy. The Bernardo Silva role in this game was whack, but I kind of enjoyed it. I think you're pushing a supremely intelligent player like Bernardo Silva. Has he maybe been able to re-engage Bernardo Silva by asking him to play this hybrid holding midfielder left back position that he's asking him to do? I don't know. Maybe Bernardo Silva just has got so good at every position. Pep just wants to chuck him somewhere else and just go, yeah, let's see if he can do this one. And I actually trust Bernardo Silva to do a pretty good job as a hybrid holding midfielder left back. If there's probably one player in world football, he's the guy who just plays everywhere. It's a pity maybe but he did fill in for one sort of moment in centre back where Laporte got dragged out and he looked over his shoulder like, oh, I guess I need to go back into centre back. So City were playing whack things. It was fun to watch, but it's still very questionable, and it'll be interesting to see if they use this in the Champions League. Although when we do the European stuff, Leipzig aren't in great form now. But anyway, I thought that was fascinating to see. Bernardo Silva is a much better option than Rico Lewis as that role. So thank God for that. Ruben Diaz was finally back in the team. Rodri scored. This game was like the game where the other guys finally won a game for City, because it had been Haaland and De Bruyne this whole time. Those guys were pretty anonymous in this game, and it was all the other guys who stepped to the fore and sort of got them a win. And it's a good result. It's a timely result going into the biggest game of the season in midweek. I don't know. I thought Villa missed a trick by not at least just putting someone right out wide on their right-hand side to expose when Bernardo Silva wants to come inside. I'll tell you one team who are going to have no trouble getting someone right out wide on the right-hand side, and that's Arsenal with Bukayo Saka, who's maybe the best in the league at playing that position. So I don't know. How brave are you going to be, Pep, with that going into a game? Where is this game? Is it at the Emirates?
It's at the Emirates, yeah.
Oof, what a big game. So, yeah, I'd be interested to get your view on City. I assume you watch that, and then obviously we could go into previewing the game we've been waiting for so long. Literally, it must be like 3 months we've been waiting for this game. When you take into account we had a World Cup in the middle as well. Crazy.
I don't know. I felt when I was watching this game, it was like City are starting to hit a little bit of form. Like, are they starting to like, put a little bit of gas in the tank just so they can, hit the acceleration button? That's what it felt like with this, because it seemed like De Bruyne was making his typical like runs through midfield with
wasn't he? Yeah, that's a good point. He was making them.
Grealish as well. He seems like Pep is trusting him a little bit more, and he's getting more consistent game time. So he's starting to hit his stride a little bit more. Yeah, Diaz and Laporte are back in the team as well. Albeit Laporte was lined up. He was lined up as a left back, wasn't he, on the team sheet?
Yeah, it probably was. I didn't see the team sheet, but when I watched it play, it was almost like an out and out three, and then Bernardo Silva was like, "You either be the holding or you go to left back."
I'm pretty sure on the team sheet, like when they presented it here, like Laporte was playing left back. I was like, that's strange. But yeah, like it seemed like, I don't know, because the thing is, like, they didn't have to play against a low block like we had to play in the last 2 weeks. So they didn't have to suffer the way we suffered. So they had all this space.
They got an early goal as well.
Yeah, and they got an early goal as well. So I don't know. Had they have gone the whole half at least without scoring a goal, then maybe we would have seen maybe some panic start to set in, or some nerves, or some questions, like players questioning each other or questioning their own decisions. But yeah, like they got the goal within 5 minutes, and then once that happens against a team that's inferior, that is more than happy to try and defend, then it opens the game up completely. And yeah, they ended up cracking them open and scoring another 2 after that.
City still do that to you. The interesting thing for me in terms of how they did it here wasn't Haaland and De Bruyne, like I said. So that bodes well for them. But yeah, to your point, I don't want to get carried away with this because it's Villa. Circumstances went right. It's going to be fascinating to see if he lines up tactically like this against Arsenal. Yeah, that's a bloody big. I can't believe. I don't know where you sit with this being an Arsenal fan, but can you believe that City have the chance to go top of the league with a win in this midweek fixture?
Top of the league, they have slightly better goal difference, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
Obviously they've played a game. They'll have played a game more.
And they played a game more. So yeah, like it's unbelievable to think that, and I don't know if it's. I don't know. Does it put more pressure or does it put more motivation on Arsenal to actually try and come out the blocks? Because we also, if we look back 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, when we lost to them in the FA Cup, we were the better team for at least the first 50 minutes or so, I'd say. And that was with pretty much our Europa League team as well, like four. I think only 4 players. There was 6 changes all up, so like 5 players then are actually part of our starting 11. And yeah, we never got to really see those combinations that we usually see with our actual starting 11. So it will be interesting to see if, especially with that Odegaard-Saka combination, which City weren't exposed to, if that actually ends up getting the better of that left-hand side for City. Because Ake actually had Saka locked down for that game.
Yeah, and that will be fascinating if they do that. But I'm thinking more of because like I said, it's unbelievable that we're here. I'm thinking of the psychological impact this could have. This game is just massive because I still believe that if Arsenal perform well and they win the game, which they're more than capable of doing, I still think you can't say Arsenal are coming in better form, but I still think their performances overall in recent weeks have still been better than City's when you take into account what City were doing before this game against Villa. But if they were to lose this game, be second on the table, have a run of 3 games, 2 losses, 1 draw. Everything just seems to be conspiring. It's just a bad situation for Arsenal, and all of a sudden they've relinquished their lead. Even with that game in hand, even if they win it, they're still only 3 points clear, which is just not enough against City, and they still have to go to the Etihad. And then the confidence that City should gain. Now, there's the interesting fact. Do City gain confidence and just start to feel like their juggernaut self and just roll on? or have they maybe timed the run a little bit early, and there's still all those deficiencies that we've been talking about that still keep popping their heads up at inopportune times, and then they start to stumble now that it's a sort of even race rather than them chasing. So I don't know. It's going to be fascinating because I guess the way we've got here, which has been maybe a bit different to you always need the leader to stumble, but we've got here by Arsenal going 2 games, picking up 1 point, and in that time, City still lost. So it's not like City are just sprinting towards Arsenal and they're this juggernaut that are just ready. But we have seen them do it in the past. It's fascinating from all of these aspects, all of these questions that need to be answered. And this game, I struggle to think of a game in recent times that for me should answer so many questions for me. Because there are so many questions first and foremost. But then this game, I think, has the ability and the impact to go at least a long way to answering those questions that I have. So, yeah, like I've said, we've been eyeing this game for so long, and I can't wait. It's finally here. It's kind of annoying that it's on at the same week where Champions League comes back. Like, why? That's really annoying. But yeah, no, I think we've got some great football to look forward to this midweek, no doubt.
Yeah, like it's actually on a Champions League night as well. So,
oh no,
like,
the good thing is it's the weaker Champions League night.
Yeah, but I'm not sure.
I think,
yeah, like otherwise we would have had to have scheduled it in 2 weeks' time, I think, because it wouldn't have been able to be next week.
We need it now. We need it now.
But you know what? You know what question I want to ask though to you is, you know how we've posed the question, like, is City's focus on the Champions League rather than the title? And now that they're going to have a game midweek next week, and they're going to start having midweek games because of Champions League, and they're still in the FA Cup as well, so they still have at least one more game of that competition, if not more, if they roll on into the later rounds. But Arsenal is also in the Europa League, but are they as focused as winning the Europa League that City are winning the Champions League? So could that actually be an advantage then, that Arsenal's in the Europa League? They're like, if we crash out of it, it's not, our fans won't get on our backs. It's not really the biggest issue, although we are probably one of the favourites to win it. Or should we just fully focus on the title? Like, what if City, they should be focused more on the Champions League because they never won a Champions League and they won 4 Premier League titles under Pep. So, which team is more motivated for what competition? Which team is more focused? Which team could actually lose focus or be derailed because they're having those extra fixtures? Because they're both in the same boat with having extra fixtures.
Yeah. I don't know, but you're asking a Liverpool fan who has been on the end of the City juggernaut in the second half of the season, when you would have thought they would have been focusing on the Champions League still. And we were setting some pace going into the high 90 points to try and win a title, and they were still like, well, we can focus on both. We can focus on the Champions League and we can win the league. It doesn't matter to us. I think Pep's got that mentality into the team perfectly. And the question for me this season was, could he get that mentality back into a team that have accomplished everything bar the big one, as we say. So yeah, they will definitely, if you gave them the option, they would take the Champions League. But I don't know, because I've been on the brunt end of it as a Liverpool supporter, I don't know if it affects their focus, to be quite honest, because it hasn't done it in the past years, and it's always been the number one priority for Manchester City and for Pep in recent years to win a Champions League again, because let's not forget how long it's been since he's won a Champions League, over a decade now. So yeah, we know that's the one they want, but it doesn't seem to take their focus off trying to rule the domestic game as they have so brilliantly in the recent seasons. And when you add up all the domestic trophies that they've put in the bank as well, so yeah, I wouldn't cling on to that one as an Arsenal supporter, but yeah, I will say that if you gave them the option, they'll take the Champions League.
I don't know. Maybe as an Arsenal supporter, I need to, and I guess as a Liverpool supporter, we need to we need to hang on to or cling our hat to the law coming fully down on them for their discretions over the last, what was it, 14 years? Indiscretions, yes. But you know what? Like, I know that's slightly off topic, but Gary Neville actually posed the same question that what I posed last week, where he said it's not just about the teams that came second during that period; it's the teams that came fifth as well. Because Leicester,
you said that.
Yeah, like Leicester would have picked up an extra 60 mil just for getting into the group stages of the Champions League. They would have been able to sign better players. Arsenal as well. Tottenham finished fifth, I think, once or twice as well. I'm not sure what other teams, but yeah, not only did you rob these teams of financial gain, you also robbed them of, I guess, the prestige and the allure of signing players. So yeah, I guess that's one for a wait and see, and I guess like us holding our fingers crossed behind our backs. Even though I don't know, like we didn't really.
I don't want it. I'm fine with it. Like I said,
we didn't really touch on that. Like how would it feel? Like for instance, like you guys would probably pick up 3 titles then, if they were to revoke the titles.
It only goes to the end of
2018. 2018, I think.
18 even. Yeah. So yeah. Exactly. So it'd only be that 13-14 the where Pellegrini won it for him.
Not one of the Pep ones? That first one?
Because it was 18-19 and then last season.
That one might be included, but okay, but like how would you feel as a Liverpool supporter, or like even I guess for any other ones, like if you're just sort of handed a title just because it's stripped from the other team, like you still had to live through coming second. Yeah. So it's like I don't know how to feel about it.
No, I wouldn't feel good about it. But I think looking at the possible sanctions, I didn't see that as an option. So probably won't come to it. And that's the whole point. All these discussions are theoretical. We need to see how this apparent 4-year case might go and all of that. So, but yeah, I think touching on the sour note of City, and Pepe's very feisty, but should we get down the Premier League and maybe look at it was the fascinating anomaly that was the fact that Manchester United and Leeds played each other twice in a week in league fixtures, which is always interesting when it happens, almost like a 2-legged tie. And United won. What did they win the game? So they won like 5-2, 3-0 at Ellen Road, didn't they? Did you watch this game?
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah.
Leeds were battering them.
Yeah, you know what, dude? You know what's? I think I jinxed Leeds because I sent a text message to Tiff, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm watching your boys play. They're playing like shit. Like I'm like it's like the 60th minute or whatever, the 70th minute. I'm like, yeah, I don't see them scoring. Like if anything, they're probably gonna cop a goal, or it's gonna be like a draw. And then Rashford just ends up popping up with that header, like literally like a minute after I sent that message.
You also jinxed it by saying that Martinelli was better than Rashford in form this season. So he's making you eat those words in recent weeks. Man, but look. What was most obvious in this game to you on a United perspective? Like, I think it was just so clear what happened in this game. And what's happened in recent games as well, actually.
There's one of two things. One will be a defender that starts with H.
He wasn't the most obvious, I would say.
But maybe something that I touched on like a week or two ago, where I said that United still haven't developed that build-up play.
100%, yeah. But the most obvious for me was no Casemiro. And he is.
Yeah, that too.
We're seeing
and
in
no
recent
Eriksen
weeks,
as well.
Yeah, no Eriksen, but Casemiro is the bigger one in terms of doing that role in midfield that's so important. And yeah, it's crazy when he's not there, because you see it more and more in recent weeks. It's like, is he like 40% of the reason why United are here? And then you see the team without, it's like, he might be 80% of the reason why United play the way they do. He's so influential on on just the whole confidence of the team as well. And it was interesting because obviously in this game, the other obvious one was Harry Maguire playing and no Lissandro Martinez, which is somewhat criminal for me, I think. I can't believe how big a turnaround I did on Lissandro Martinez this season. But he's honestly one of my favourite players in the league right now, and he plays for United. So I just love his no-nonsenseness. He's just brilliant.
You know what? We hang on. We didn't. I wrote some notes from the first game. Did you watch the first game or no?
Chelsea.
No, the first United Chelsea, the first United Leeds.
Oh
game.
yeah, I did. Yeah, that was a fascinating.
Okay, so I wrote some notes here, and like because we didn't do a preview / review pod of the midweek / So basically, there was two things that I want to bring up. So, and look, I know this is all after the fact and whatever, but I just want to see if there's anything, if it's just me creating something out of nothing, or if it's actually a thing. So, firstly, there was. Did you say around the 30th minute there was where Martinez like slid in uncontrollably on Gnonto? And
I don't remember, but I know a lot of fuss was kicked up
so
about that should have been a red
okay,
card.
And you know what? I've seen it numerous times this season, last season. What you know how like if a player slides in, he gets the ball with his studs, and then obviously because the ball is cleared, he follows through and then gets the player on the shin pads or whatnot. And he's always given at least a yellow, if not a red, but it's always dictated as a foul. Martinez did the exact same thing in the box around the 30th minute, something like that, and nothing was given. It's like, oh yeah, good clearance. It's like I saw the replays. I'm like, what the hell? Like, how was this not picked up on? Like, yeah, he got the ball, but it's always given as a foul when there's follow through on it with the studs. Like, I don't understand how that wasn't given. Secondly, and this is one where I know VAR doesn't check for yellow cards. Like, it doesn't bring back decisions for yellow cards. But there was a Martinez challenge outside the box in the first half, again. And it was a clear challenge. The ref didn't even give it as a free kick. VAR checked it whether it was a penalty because VAR was like, okay, this is definitely a foul, but we'll see if it's inside the box or not. It wasn't inside the box, but that would have been a yellow card had the ref of actually not. And this is another point. Referees seem to be a little bit lackluster and a little bit lazy because they're like, oh, okay, well, if I don't pick up on it, VAR will pick up on it. So it seems
you
like
stop winding yourself up.
No, but it seems like they're reverting a little bit back to that. But that was a clear foul, and VAR went back and checked it. And if it was inside the box, it would have been given a penalty. But it was also a yellow. I reckon it was a yellow card. I reckon in those instances where a player should be given a clear yellow card, VAR should tell the ref, give this player a yellow card because that player should play the rest of the game on a yellow card. And now he's on no yellow cards, so he can go on the rest of the game, the rest of the however many minutes is remaining, and he can pick up a yellow card pretty much for free because he didn't get issued the first one. So that's an issue that I reckon should be looked at and should be changed.
Maybe. Can you give us a minute? I just need to do something.
Yeah, you seem to be looking off into the distance.
Yeah.
All right, we're back. Caleb,
We're back.
I want to get your points on. I want to get your thoughts on those 2 points that I made because you know what, the first one, because of the follow through, that would have been given a yellow, if not a red, and then the second challenge would have been actually his second yellow. So Martinez actually technically should have been sent off, had the refs and VAR been doing their job properly.
Yeah, well, refs doing their job properly is not going to happen apparently. But the main point is I don't want any extra jurisdiction given to VAR. In fact, I want to take away more of it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of sick of talking about referees. It's so nitty gritty. VAR sort of puts the spotlight on every decision because we expect, oh, this happened, so why didn't VAR look at this? And we can nitpick at everything now with VAR. I just want to go back to when we sort of, like, it wasn't great sometimes because some decisions were egregious, but you just had to sort of accept what the referee was doing. And you had to trust that the referee got to this level because they were competent. And now it seems like they're even more incompetent, and there's more ways to spotlight how incompetent they are. And it's just such a crappy topic. I hate talking about VAR, but it's in the game, and sometimes we've got to talk about it because some decisions are just ridiculous, and that's the way it is, unfortunately. But in terms of if we're doing anything to give VAR any extra jurisdiction, no, thank you. I want its powers on the game limited rather than increased. But I get your points on all of that. I get the psychological points of playing with the yellow card and obviously playing a man up if that's what it should have been. So yeah.
But you know what? It sort of goes into when sort of basketball psychology and the way at least I view basketball. You know how fouls are much easily committed and given. So like if you're on four fouls, then the fifth one you're sent off. Is that right? Or is it the sixth one?
Yeah.
Okay. And you can accumulate fouls like very easily. So you can be sent off after the first quarter if you're playing really like stupidly and really rough. You can. But my mentality with that has always been, if you know a player is on 4 fouls or 5 fouls, charge at them and go to the rim. And I have that same similar sort of stance in football where, like, if a player is on a yellow card, whether it's especially for left backs and right backs, because you know how generally tricky wingers are.
Well, you can isolate them as well.
Yeah, like I don't get why that isn't done more. Like especially if like a left or right back picks up a yellow card.
Yeah, and forget even putting a card on it, especially when you have a matchup sort of advantage. Then sometimes some managers are reluctant to play the matchups and they want to overplay the process and the system. But sometimes it's just, can we isolate a matchup? Can we get this 1v1 or can we isolate someone's weakness for the opposition? So yeah, the best managers I think do that, and that's why when we're going to touch on it, that's why the Champions League is so fascinating, because that's probably the one where you see the most of that type of stuff. So yeah, I can't wait for that to be back. Can't wait to talk about that. But yeah, definitely, especially when you add a yellow card into it, you've got to, and I think most, especially if it's a fullback, like you say, and they're up against a tricky winger, then there's always that excitement after the yellow card. It's like, oh, go at him again. Come on.
Well, I saw it. I know, like, we're going off topic. We're going to get back on topic. But like, I saw it a couple of weeks ago when Arsenal I can't remember who they faced, but like Saka ended up enticing a yellow card from his direct opponent, like really early on, like within the first 10-15 minutes. And then after that, like, they barely played on that side, on Saka's side, and they barely tried to isolate and play the one-on-one. And it's like, why aren't you, like, he's gotten the better of him like numerous times. I think it might have been against Newcastle, against Dan Burn, if I'm not mistaken. And it's like, why aren't you taking advantage of this, especially against Dan Burn, where it's like he's probably like one of the slowest like players in the entire Premier League, like not like mostly because of his height. So like, you know, where he lacks stuff, he makes up for it in other departments. But like, why are you not playing on Saka's side more and isolating, trying to get one-on-one, trying to draw in the second yellow card? Like, I don't understand it. And yeah, like managers should be encouraging that a lot more.
I think most good ones will, but sometimes you see games. Maybe Newcastle changed something in that game, because remember they did start 4-3-3, and then all of a sudden they got hit in the mouth, and they're like, "No, we got to go 4-5-1, and we got to just clog up this midfield." So maybe it was just harder to get the ball into Saka, but if you can, you definitely should. And I guess that's a good segue when we're talking a bit lower down the league, just working our way, because I think United is somewhat the gatekeeper. and they're the third place. I don't know if they can get higher, especially if City start to roll. I don't think they can, especially because they've played all their fixtures against teams above them. So, but I think they are pretty clearly now for me, especially if you can win this game at Leeds where you didn't. I know sometimes I rail on the didn't play well, but they probably should have lost this game, to be fair, but they still come through it because they have a really informed striker who is now bordering on being an actually good striker in Rashford, even though he might not be a striker, he might be an inside forward or whatever you want to call him. But I think if he continues this form for the rest of the season, leads United to a good position, then we could start maybe calling him a £250,000 a week player because he would have earned that. Even Sancho's come back and looked good. So, yeah, I think United have somewhat clearly made themselves the third best team. And that coupled with the fact that Newcastle, I don't think they look bad because to the point, and the main point with Newcastle is they're always defensively solid. They're the most defensively solid team in the league. They probably work the hardest for each other and they work the hardest to be defensively solid. But that obviously you trade off going forward. And, you know, in this game against Bournemouth, it's a game they should be winning. It's a game if they want to finish top four, they really need to be winning. The good news is Almiron scores again, so at least he hasn't dried up completely. Isak didn't look very good in this game. Callum Wilson injured again. And then, you know, Sam Maximan has to come in, and sometimes Sam Maximan is doing things like by himself somewhat. He's not really... Like Almiron fits into the... And obviously the main piece is Guimaraes is out. And it's funny because I didn't expect to see this, but I saw it more than anything in terms of the positioning against the ball because I thought Longstaff was leaving big holes in the midfield against Bournemouth for Bournemouth to break into, whereas when you watch Guimaraes play, maybe it's just because he's able to put so much more pressure on you in possession of the ball and you're sort of set back like 10, 15 yards initially anyway. But like when Bournemouth got the ball, they just had space to go in there. And when Guimaraes plays, you don't really notice that space. So maybe that's something I'm underrating in terms of what Guimaraes does well, apart from obviously the range of passing, the ability to split a defence open. But yeah, maybe his positioning against the ball is also fantastic, and I need to look at that when he comes back. But yeah, Newcastle have somewhat stalled. And the interesting thing, and what we started the pod on now, was Liverpool just finally looked like a half-decent team again. And they sort of that's how you put away relegation fodder for all those Arsenal fans out there.
Happy
no, I'm
Caleb.
fighting back.
No, you know what though?
No,
like Liverpool look good. Like at times, I'm like, this is the Liverpool that I'm used to seeing. Like high-paced, high energy, high intensity. The quality isn't quite there yet, but at least the energy was there today. Yeah,
it'd be remiss for us not to say the whole game could change if Tarkowski's header is 6 inches the other side of the post. Yeah. Because not only is that not a goal for them, it's also a goal for us. So yeah, crazy swing in the game. But after that point, Liverpool never looked back. Everton were barely a threat. They had like a couple of chances towards the end, but that was it really. They didn't really threaten. And Liverpool, yeah, to your point, played a much higher intensity. Fabinho looked a lot better with Basetic next to him. Henderson was back at the team. He was at least running. I thought that helped Salah a lot. So and Gakpo finally gets the goal and looks like a good player in there. And Nunez obviously sets up the first goal as well. So obviously he's hit and miss. Talk about players doing something separate to the team. He's definitely one who's sort of like, he reminds me, if we go back to NBA terms, he reminds me of a Russell Westbrook. Just like sort of give him the ball. He'll just go nuts. He'll do his own thing. And then it might be good, it might be bad. So, but yeah, that coupled with Newcastle stalling a bit and the fact that Newcastle is Liverpool's next game in the league, all of a sudden, I think they could be 2 or 3 points off them.
Also,
if you take into account...
Tottenham lost, and they
lost
their best...
Oh my God.
They lost one of their best players as well.
They did lose one of their best players, and Harry Kane was anonymous against Leicester. What a crazy game. Leicester just popping 4 past them, and no Christian Romero as well. You could tell in that game, and Eric Dyer was diabolical. And I don't know. I don't know if you want to say they missed Hugo Lloris, but you might have found a goalkeeper who's worse than Hugo Lloris and Fraser Forster. So
isn't the guy
they
like
don't look
40?
good. I can't. Huh?
He's like 40 or something, isn't he?
I know, man, and he just can't get low. He's such a big guy. He just no.
He needs help getting out of a bloody chair.
But no, it's just I can't believe that they didn't go for Keylor Navas, who was available, and obviously he was available. He went to Forest.
That's a big miss.
That's a mad one for me. So especially when you think of even before the injury, how bad a form Lloris was in. So yeah, what a horrible day for them in terms of both the cumulative result and the injury. And yeah, so Liverpool, although the last couple of weeks have been doom and gloom, have been terrible, the table all of a sudden says otherwise, and we're above Chelsea somehow. Because I actually thought Chelsea looked really good for the first 20 minutes against West Ham. Like my note said, Chelsea look like a team who could win the Champions League. And then it was just like, and then the next part said, until they didn't. Because after the first 25 minutes, then they just went missing. And West Ham were just overrunning them for the rest of the game. It was a crazy swing in that game. But I thought when they looked good, they looked good. They didn't get their second goal because Havertz was, a shoulder offside or whatever. And then from that point on, West Ham just got into the game and probably could have won it on another day. But yeah, I thought Chelsea need to keep that consistency because they have the pieces. There's no doubt about it. Enzo's been so good coming into that midfield. Thiago Silva's still fantastic. It'll be interesting to see how they're going to flip this switch between the Premier League combination. Looks like it's going to be Thiago Silva and Badia Shield, but Champions League, they're going to go back to Koulibaly because they didn't register Badia Shield. So they're going to flip their centre-back partnerships for the Champions League. I think probably the right combinations for the right competitions if you look at it, because all of a sudden, I guess we're going to touch on that. Is there anyone else we need to touch on in this race for top 4? Chelsea might not be completely out of it, but Liverpool are above them now, so which is
technically Brighton and Fulham are there as well, and Brentford could be there technically.
They're all good sides. They're all really good sides, but
I can't say they're going to get top 4.
Out
of all of them, maybe Brighton, yeah.
Yeah, Brighton for me because they have so many more weapons than the other two.
Yeah.
But yeah, who was I talking about before? Oh, Chelsea. Yeah, I guess. Do you want to do the Champions League? Yeah, Champions League, and then we'll finish with a European roundup, a quick one at the end.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because the main point for me was that first 20 minutes, like I said, Chelsea are a team who, when I stack them up against the other teams in the Champions League, why can't they win the Champions League? With the players they've brought in, if Potter, I like that Potter was keeping it simple and sort of just playing 4-2-3-1. Like, we don't need to over-elaborate. These are good players. We don't need to play some sort of stupid formation with these. We don't need to be gimmicky. We've just got good players now. But the problem always will be striker, but maybe João Felix and Kai Havertz equal one striker. So, I don't know. They're a fascinating team. They need to... Obviously, their next stage is playing well for a whole half or 60 minutes or a whole match. But for those 20 minutes, I was just like, well, I don't know. I don't know if there's any... There are teams who could reach higher levels than that, but are there teams who I trust to reach higher levels than that in Europe at the moment? Not really. There's not many of them. So, I don't know. This Champions League is wide open, and I'm so glad it's got to be back. And I don't know. I'm going to let you take the discussion of the Champions League where you want to, but I guess that was my segue because it just looks interesting in terms of that, obviously. And I think we've been saying that for a couple of weeks now.
Well, we can stay on Chelsea and then do their fixture before we do the other ones. But just quickly, is Kante back or is he what's happening with him?
I don't know. Has there been news? I haven't seen anything.
I don't know, man. Because at first, I think pre-World Cup, it's like, oh yeah, he's going to miss the World Cup, but then he's going to be back in January. And now it's like, well, he's not back in January. We're already in Feb, and he's still not playing. Kovacic, it seems like he's playing 1 week and then doesn't play 2 weeks because of a knock or something. But I'm just thinking Enzo seems like he's slotted in, he's carried on the same form from Benfica /World Cup. But like playing Enzo and Kante together, if they can string together that partnership, then yeah, maybe like based on defensive solidity, why can't they win the Champions League? Like that's what wins you tournaments essentially. Like having a good defense and just conceding less, and then winning 1 or 2-0 over those two legs. So yeah, if Kante can come back, then I think I'd rate them pretty highly to win it based on the personnel that they have.
I'd even say Kovacic, because Enzo can hold, which is the big thing as well. But yeah, Kante especially. You know what kind of made me a little bit sick, but I will give him like a little bit of praise. Ruben Loftus-Cheek actually played pretty well in this game. When Chelsea were good, he actually played all right. He actually did what you'd expect a guy who's like built like that to do, in terms of he picked up the ball and he actually drove it a few times. I'm like, he's actually running with the ball. He looks like he might have a bit of pace. Because like when you watch him, it's like, oh, this guy should be great. Look at this guy, he's fantastic. And then he does nothing. It's like, what the hell, man? But yeah, he actually looked good. If he can do that week after week, then maybe Don Hutchison might have been right and he might have the talent. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. But he looked all right. But yeah, to your point, Kante. It'll be interesting to see if Kante comes back, how he comes back as well. Because this one seems to be, I guess a couple of seasons ago, he was injured. I think for the majority of that season as well. He's just very injury prone, but if you could get him to string together for the knockout rounds of the Champions League, that's all you need. It's kind of like the NBA playoffs. Can we get our players fit in time for that? And that's all that matters. So for Chelsea, it looks like that's all that matters. They have Dortmund covered up in the midweek, and Dortmund, we know my views on Dortmund, but all of a sudden they probably are. Especially with Eintracht having a really rough night. I guess we'll sprinkle the European stuff into the Champions League stuff. But Eintracht had a really bad night and lost away at Köln 3-0. And Leipzig, and it's so annoying because I didn't get a chance to watch this game. When you think you would get a chance to watch this, somewhere would be broadcasting the Union Berlin versus RB Leipzig tie. But no one was broadcasting it. And Union win 2-1, and all of a sudden Leipzig and Eintracht are 4th and 5th, when I thought they were probably the second and third challengers to Bayern in the Bundesliga. So my assertions on them, my assertions on a lot of the leagues around Europe are sort of being proven wrong in recent weeks.
Yeah, they have been.
And we'll get to that. But
ever since we did that like sort of mid-season prediction.
I know. It's terrible. It's been terrible. But at least I stuck to Bayern winning, although Union are only 1 point behind them. But yeah, with Eintracht having a bad night, with RB Leipzig having a bad night, all of a sudden Dortmund, they're third. They're only, I think, 3 points off Bayern. And they're winning games. I don't know how many they're up to in a row now, but every game I've seen them in recent weeks, they've won, whether it be fortuitously or not.
Hang on,
and I guess they have a lot of young talent in front areas who... Am I back?
Yeah, you cut out, now you're back.
Yeah, Dortmund have a lot of young talent in front areas who, I guess at this stage of their careers, you'd expect to be somewhat inconsistent. So maybe they're hitting a patch of form. I still don't quite trust it, but we'll see. But the main thing for them, they have Jude Bellingham. So we get to see Jude Bellingham up against Enzo Fernandez, which is going to be a fun little tussle in the midfield. Am I that excited for this tie? I am a little more excited after seeing that Chelsea can at least play to a really good level for 20, 25 minutes. When you couple that with the fact that I think they have some fantastic footballers in that team and everyone seems to be getting fit at the right time. I'd probably put Chelsea as favourites for this. And that's probably... And maybe I'm putting too much trust in that 25 minutes that I saw, but that's pretty much the main reason why I'd put them as favourites. But Dortmund have good form. I don't trust Dortmund's defence at all, I think. Sula's all right. If they're playing Schlotterbeck, like, make a cross and just pray because he's all over the place. Hummels is way past it. Defensively, he's terrible. Who holds the midfield? I don't know. Oz Chan or Emre Chan. I don't fancy either of that. I guess you might ask Bellingham to do more defensive work depending on situation. So I trust Chelsea's defence a bit more. It'll be interesting to see if we get a Champions League version of Koulibaly. Like I said, because maybe can he go back to Napoli Koulibaly? If he goes back to Napoli Koulibaly, then you have Thiago Silva and Koulibaly next to each other. That might be the best defensive partnership in the whole competition. You'd be struggling to compete with that. So Chelsea, you look at it on paper, perfectly capable of winning this competition, and for that reason, I put them as slight favourites. Because when I look at Dortmund on paper, I don't think, even in this open version of the Champions League, I don't think they're capable of winning it. But watch them go and beat Chelsea over the two legs, because Chelsea are hugely inconsistent, and I'm wrong about Dortmund, and Dortmund keep wanting to stick it to me every time I profess my hatred for. Well, I guess it's not hatred. They're winning enough games now that maybe there's something good there.
You know, the one thing that I'm it's maybe the big picture question is, when does it all click for Chelsea? Because all these players, they came in, you know, from the middle of Jan to the end of Jan. They've had, like, this is what, their second or third game together. And also, when does Potter start consistently playing the same 9 players in their positions and in the same formation as well? Like, is the Champions League maybe, like, is this fixture against Dortmund maybe too soon? Because City's playing next week, for instance. Liverpool as well, I think, is playing next week. So they have an extra week to try and find some form and try and prepare. Whereas if Chelsea was playing next week, it would have given Potter, you know, an extra week of training, an extra game as well in the Premier League to get this all together. So that's the question, like, when does this all click for him? Because, yeah, they have the personnel. Like, you can't disagree with that.
You can, but you said big picture. You could take it even bigger picture than that, and you could apply that question to, I dare say, 10 or so of the teams left in the competition. When does it click? When does it? Because City may have stumbled on something, or they may change for the Emirates game, and then we're back to square one. It's like, which City team is he going to name for this? PSG.
I look at this slightly differently.
When we get to that, we'll talk about that. But yeah, go. Yeah, because they're all new players.
Yeah, it's pretty much a whole new team. So like they need to rebuild that chemistry. They need to get that understanding of each other. It's a new coach as well, because essentially, yeah, like it's.
To be fair, is it a new team? Because I just went through the defensive positions, and like if. Say it's Arrizabalaga, it's Reece James, it's Thiago Silva next to Koulibaly. Say it's Chilwell over Cucurella, and Cucurella's been there from the start of the season as well, just like Koulibaly. And then say it's Enzo, who's obviously new, next to Ruben Loftus-Cheek. For Chelsea's fans' sake, so you're hoping or for football fans' sake, you're hoping it's Conte. But yeah, even a Kovacic if he's fit. So like that solid foundation behind the ball at least isn't all new. But I guess the front four are all new except for Havertz really, who he seems pretty keen on playing up there. But I think if you were going to choose who you'd want to all be new, it would definitely be the front four over any sort of portion of the back 6 or back 7. So in terms of that, I think it could work nicely for them. And I think we have seen in recent weeks, even though he hasn't been getting the results, I think Potter has stuck with at least a continuous shape. And as he's got players back from injury, he's starting to... I think what we saw at West Ham is pretty much what we're going to see in the midweek, to be quite honest. And I get your point, but I would apply that question to so many other clubs, even though their differences, their circumstances may be more due to the World Cup or I don't know, whatever it be. When we touch on them individually, we'll touch on why where they're at. But when I look at the whole competition, Chelsea are it's not unusual for Chelsea, and it's not even concerning for them to be in this position when I compare them to the rest of the Champions League.
Yeah, like I know the majority of those players, at least the back 5. Maybe even 6 if you include Kovacic or Kante from the midfield. That they were there from the start of the season, but they did sign. I don't even know how many players they signed. Because they signed a couple. They signed a new defender as well, didn't they? And they signed a midfielder, and didn't they sign someone else in one of the forward positions apart from Mudryk and João Felix?
Yeah, how do you say it? Naughty? Forget his name. The
He's
winger from PSV.
yeah. But so like they've signed so many new players, and I know that they can essentially field the team that was there from the start of the season, but Potter won't want to do that. You want to have your own mark on this team, so he already needs to start building it in his vision from now. Um, so yeah, that's why I'm saying rather when does it all click for these guys? Because when I feel that when you sign new players into a team, when that clicks, that's more. I feel that's more dangerous than when you have an already established team that's like they've already won a lot of stuff and like they need to like re-click, sort of like City. I don't think that's as dangerous as this because when a new team clicks, I feel like as for the players, it's more exciting. It's
Yeah,
more
yeah.
there's more
It's
freedom.
fun.
There's less
It's
friction. It's
fun.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I'm more. If to use your phrase, I'd probably be more inclined to buy Chelsea stock than Man City stock.
Yeah, yeah, and that's crazy that we find ourselves here. But I guess I am interested to see where City go. If especially if he's reinvigorated a few of those players, and if this is the team he picks going forward. But we've already talked about that. We get to go into depth on that after we see what they do at the Emirates
Yeah.
in midweek, which is obviously the other midweek. But I guess I don't have much to say on the other tie from, I think, the Thursday morning in the Champions League because we don't get Portuguese league, so I don't get to watch Benfica that much. Probably a good thing for me because my plate's already pretty full with every other team in Europe. But obviously they lose Enzo Fernandez, but I hear they're in pretty good form in Portugal and they just keep winning over there. So to your point, that's a team who seem to have that continuity. But they're not an old team. They haven't won everything, obviously. And the champ. And I said it after the Enzo transfer. That's the most disappointing thing because I think if this Benfica team still had Enzo Fernandez in it, like I honestly wouldn't rule them out winning the whole thing. Like obviously they would need things to break for them. They'd need a somewhat favourable draw, and they have got it in Club Brugge in the round of 16. A Club Brugge who are in disarray, I hear in Belgium. I think they're fourth, and they obviously have Scott Parker as their manager. And it's crazy to think that Scott Parker is managing in the last 16 of the Champions League now. So. If you wanted the right draw, you got the right draw in this round of 16. So you've got to think that they're going through to the quarterfinals. And then if you get the right draw there again, and they still I think the fact that they don't have Enzo anymore, I would say puts their ceiling at quarterfinals. But I'd be interested to see who they got in the next round. So I wouldn't put a semis past them. Do I think they'll get a semis? No, I think quarters will be ultimately their ceiling. But like I say, draw is key there. But Benfica, they're just a really solid team. They know what they're doing. They still have all their other pieces, I believe. There was no Gonzalo Ramos transfer. Rafa Silva's still there. Still got options up front. And the defense is pretty solid. And they've got a World Cup winning centre back in Nicolas Otamendi sort of leading that. So they're still a really solid team. A team to watch out for. They should get through this. And then I don't know. Depending on who they get in the quarterfinals, that'll be an interesting tie, regardless of Enzo Fernandez or not. So, yeah, that's just talking the Scott Parker point and the fact that we're talking about Benfica as a team who are pretty much nailed on quarterfinals finalists for the Champions League just tells you everything you need to know about this season's competition, this season's knockout rounds. But yeah, Thursday. It's a good thing Thursday are these two ties because Thursday is also Thursday morning for us is also Arsenal Man City. So yeah, I would have hated if it was the Bayern PSG and who's our other tie on that day?
Tottenham, AC Milan.
Yeah, Tottenham Milan. Sort of. It's kind of the default sort of derby games. Like whoever gets through these games almost gets through by default because of the other team were just worse than them rather than one team being better than the other in both of these. Just crazy. I guess Bayern. Maybe I'm a bit harsh on Bayern to be fair, but oh my god, we should go into these now, shouldn't we? Which one do you want to start on?
We'll finish. We'll finish on the Super League because there was some news about that from last week that we haven't spoken about. So we'll finish on that topic, and so that's the main event, I suppose. I guess the pre-main event. Let's make it PSG Bayern, and then the one. So let's get into AC Milan Tottenham.
Well, AC Milan will give me a chance to sort of do a bit of Serie A stuff, and thankfully for them, they still go with a sort of 5-3 or a 5/3 at the back in their game against Torino. Torino are the toughest test according to the table outside of the top six in Italy, apart from Juve, obviously, who are no longer in the top six, but would be, I think, second or equal points with Inter, who only drew against Sampdoria this morning, who I haven't seen their game. Inter continue to confound me. They can play in the big games really, really well, and then when they're asked to beat a team that they should beat, they just never seem to do it. But that makes them a threat in this competition, but they have Porto in the next round, so maybe that's a team you expect them to beat and they don't beat. So Inter I can't put much stock in, but we'll discuss them, I guess, next week when their tie is a bit closer. But yeah, they're second. Napoli now have a 15-point gap at the top of Serie A after they beat bottom place Cremonese, who are still winless in all games. They put up a bit of a fight, to be fair, Cremonese, but Napoli continue to be the best team in Europe. And when we talk about that's the tie I'm really excited to talk about, although Eintracht had a bad weekend. But Eintracht Napoli is the sneaky, at least in terms of recent form, those two teams are the ones I want to watch the most. And I want to watch the battle of number nines because Randall Koulibaly is honestly, and this is on form. Like I'm not saying he's better than Lewandowski or anything like this, but on form, after the World Cup, he has been one of the three best strikers in Europe for me. I think I'd put him above Haaland on form post World Cup. I'd put him just above Lewandowski post World Cup form, and I'd put him in that bracket with Osimhen and Harry Kane because I think he's just been absolutely fantastic. Unless you want to put Rashford as a striker, I wouldn't put Rashford as a striker. So, but maybe you shouldn't put Koulibaly as a striker because he plays anywhere across that front three. I think he's the Bundesliga leader in assists. But anyway, I'm going off topic because I wanted to give my love to Randall Koulibaly, who I just love watching at the moment. But yeah, Victor Osimhen is one who I would still put above him. He scores again, tap in. Strikers score goals in any way, and Victor Osimhen continues to. But from him to another striker who scores, who I said was done, and he's trying to prove me wrong, although Milan are not in good form. But Olivier Giroud pops up with the winner. It was classic Theo Hernandez cross into Olivier Giroud to hold off Torino. I thought Torino probably did enough on another day. They probably could have won the game. A draw was probably a fair result, but Milan are at the point where they're just any means necessary, and it's a real pity for them that they don't have a left back as backup for Theo Hernandez, because I think they somewhat stumbled onto something with the 3-4-3 they played in this game. I think if they had a more out and out sort of, or like one of those left backs who plays left back / left centre back, maybe a Reinildo from Atletico Madrid, because I think he would be a fantastic player to sort of play as a left centre back, but when you want to sit in shape, it's almost like Theo Hernandez should be a left midfielder for me, because it's the Trent conundrum. He's getting targeted now. Teams smell blood when they go down the left-hand side of Milan, but we know how good he is going forward and how creative he can be and how much he could create for the team. So he's not in very good form at all, but Milan still did enough, and he was still the assister for the goal in this game. So much needed. Does it fix things going into this tie against Tottenham? I don't know. I'll be interested to see if Pioli played the 3-4-3, because that's how he expects to play against Tottenham, and he wants to match up what Tottenham are doing. If he does do that, this tie is just wide open, isn't it? Because we're talking about at least Milan won going into the tie. Tottenham lost 4-1 at Leicester. And that's a Leicester team who haven't been great in recent weeks. So, and do we even need to mention Bentancur being out for this one? So
that too.
Yeah, this is the big default tie. Because it's like, all right, who's got to go through this? this one. And before I give you a chance to sort of go into maybe the specifics of this matchup, I'll just finish off with the Serie A stuff because I thought performance of the weekend the shout out has to be for Atalanta, who were awesome, I thought, against Lazio. And that's another prediction that is killing me at the moment. I thought Lazio were the second best team in Serie A. They now sit in sixth place after losing to Atalanta on the weekend. But to be fair to them, they're only 2 points off third. So that race for top four in Serie A is awesome. Roma, I actually didn't watch this weekend, but they drew, I think, 1-1 against, who was it? Lecce. Lecce always love getting a result away from, against one of these big boys. But yeah, Roma, probably for the best that I didn't watch them. They're not always the best to watch. But Atalanta were awesome. The Coop Miners versus Sergei Milinkovic-Savic battle in midfield. Coop Miners won it probably 10-8. Coop Miners was everywhere in this game. He was so good. Hopefully his price doesn't go up too much, but I don't think Liverpool will be looking at him anyway. But I keep saying he's the midfielder that I'd want Liverpool to be looking at just because I think he'd be a reasonable price and he's freaking awesome. He does a bit of everything, can get forward, can defend, gets box to box, can press, can shoot, can pass, physical, just a really good midfielder. And Atalanta are a really good watch. Ademola Lookman is another one having a fantastic season. And at the start of the season, I thought flash in the pan, but he's just continued the form. His link-up play is fantastic. He's scoring a lot of goals. He's been one of Atalanta's main men. And budget Haaland up front, Rasmus Højlund. I think he's only 17 or 18. He's in a rich vein of form, left footer, big Danish lad. He's not quite Norwegian, but he's pretty much the same. Honestly, he is budget Haaland. And he's got a few years on him, so his development will be fascinating in recent years. So I would say I would encourage listeners to, if you want to be almost guaranteed of a pretty good game, I'd watch Atalanta at the moment because I think they have really good players all over the park. Giorgio Scalvini's an 18-year-old centre-back who's looking really good as well. And they play a pretty open style. So even if they're not having a good day, the opposition should have a good day against them. So Atalanta are always a fun watch. They had definitely, for me, were the most impressive team of the weekend, putting themselves into a very good position to get that top four spot in Italy, which is obviously super open. And just on the flip side, Lazio sort of continue to struggle. Milinkovic-Savic did his sort of thing. He was sort of made a few mistakes, but then did some fantastic things. But the main takeaway is Ciro Immobile can't buy a goal at the moment. Missed two or three really good chances in this game. And yeah, Lazio need him scoring again because they need both of those guys. It's sort of like the Serie A's Haaland and De Bruyne. When those two aren't playing, Lazio are a decent side, and they've had to do without Immobile for big portions of the season. To be fair to them, they taped it together very well, but now that he's back, they need him scoring. Otherwise, they're not gonna. They'll do the Sarri thing, and they'll stumble to the finish. And they might not get this top four. So yeah, that's a bad prediction for me. And a little bit of a shout out to Juve. I know they're somewhat irrelevant, 10 points behind, but their form is still pretty good. And I guess I need to somewhat apologize to Angel Di Maria because Di Maria has been one of the better older performers coming out of the World Cup, which has really shook me because I thought he'd just sort of be a guy who played to the World Cup, wanted to play in the World Cup, and then after that, he might have even retired. He might just piss off back to Argentina or do whatever he wants. But he's actually fighting for the cause given where Juve are, and he's playing quite well in recent weeks. So I've been surprised by that, pleasantly surprised. He looks kind of like the evolved Di Maria that we expected to play in the number 10 role, and he's doing a good job in that. So yeah, that's the Serie A roundup. But let's go more focused on the tie between Tottenham and Milan, the default derby, I guess. And I'll be interested to see get your take on who you fancy to come out of this one.
Well, before this weekend, I thought I would have been a little bit more favoured towards Tottenham because they pulled off the win against City. They looked like they might have gotten a little bit of solidity back. Bentancur was coming back because he had a bit of an injury coming out of the World Cup as well, didn't he? Because he didn't come straight back into that Tottenham team. Yeah. Kulusevski as well. Like he was coming back from injury. And it's like, okay, like they got players coming back now. They've just beaten City as well at home. Hopefully they're setting themselves up for, to make some sort of a run. And AC Milan weren't really in the richest vein of form, but now it's like the script is like completely flipped. They get blasted 4-1 to Leicester. They lose Bentancur as well, and yeah, like I'm just. It seems like one step forward, two steps back almost with Tottenham at the moment. So I don't know. Like it's probably like whoever's gonna go out. It's more. It's not a question of who is the better team. It's a question of who is not the worst team.
Bad.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I'm slightly more favored towards AC Milan just because I think that they're a little bit more solid as a unit and know how they want to play as a unit. Whereas like Tottenham just seem like they're all over the shop. They sort of lost their way. They're not as cohesive.
Yeah, the same Milan that went 3-0 loss in the Super Coppa final against Inter, the same 4-0 loss away at Lazio, and then a 5-2 loss at home to Sassuolo.
No, look,
consecutive. No, but like I'm just pointing out, like this is the team that we're trusting to be more solid than another team in the round of 16 in the Champions League. It's just madness. And these two teams of Milan and Tottenham, who are arguably two of the better clubs in Europe, or should have been going into the season. So it's just madness.
Yeah,
but
look, like form-wise, yeah, AC Milan definitely isn't on the same form that they were last season, but the unit as itself and the way that they play hasn't exactly changed. Whereas,
it has in recent weeks, to be fair, because Pioli's been searching for. Obviously, he went 5-3-2 in the derby, and now he went 3-4-3, and they've always been a 4-2-3-1 team. So. That's another interesting thing. How do Milan line up? We know how Tottenham will line up. It will be 3-4-3. You'd expect. But yeah, I don't know. Like, am I going to be blinded enough by the Torino result for Milan, or am I going to be blinded enough by? I think it would have been a question even if the results existed by themselves. But to not have Bentancur to go up against Tonali in the midfield, I guess it's a Højbjerg-Tonali. No, I don't know, man. I'm gonna go with Spurs. I think Spurs will get through just for the Harry Kane factor.
The second game is at Tottenham, and like I know there's
Tottenham won their group. Obviously.
I know there's no away goals at the moment, and I'm not saying, and I know Tottenham isn't a fortress even in a similar atmosphere or whatever to what Anfield is for Liverpool, but Tottenham do play better at home compared to away. So yeah, that might help them. The fact that like it's a favourable, I guess, fixture where it's like they're playing away first and they're playing at home second. So unless they get completely blown away at the San Siro, then that's my prediction is completely out the window.
Can't see it happening. At least Giroud's in somewhat, at least good goal scoring form. But again, like Giroud, to play Giroud, you have to sacrifice so much against the ball. And then the fact is, you have Rafael Leao, who you also have to sacrifice so much against the ball to play with him. And then the guy you have backing up Rafael Leao, who doesn't really work defensively very hard at all, is Theo Hernandez, who is being pinpointed and targeted. So I think for Milan to even win the game at the San Siro, they're going to have to have at least those three playing on form, and Sandro Tonali's going to have to play well as well. I just think Tottenham, even without Bentancur, will still just have enough, but that one definitely has thrown a spanner in the works, and I'm not going to be surprised if Milan come out on top. But I'm hoping that Milan finds something. I'm hoping those players, especially my boy Theo Hernandez, sort of rises to this occasion. Rafael Leao hasn't been in bad form, to be fair, himself, and Giroud's scoring. Tonali's one who isn't in very good form, and I hope he rises a little bit. So I guess I'm hoping that Milan go through, but only if they play better. If they're still the team that they have been in recent weeks, then I won't be sad to lose them from this competition. And I guess the sad thing will be that Tottenham are the team going through, but at least Tottenham have Harry Kane, who's in fantastic form, although he was anonymous at Leicester. But at least they have him. But you talk about the rest of the team. Kulusevski hasn't been great since injury. Son, we don't even need to talk about. At least they'll have Christian Romero back, which will be huge for him. I'm interested to see if Pedro Porro has any effect on this team. He certainly didn't at Leicester, but that's unfair to judge him just off that. But yeah, fascinating tie from that aspect, but I'm not holding my breath for a high-quality tie between these two teams the way they are right now.
You know what Tottenham should have done? They should. You know how you have those like bands or those comics that do like one night only. Like they should have done one night only. Bale at the San Siro, wind back the clock. Like just have him there for one game, get him back out of retirement.
He's trying to get on the PGA Tour, man. Come on, can't distract him from that.
He's actually doing really well, isn't he?
He did play in the Pro-Am.
Yeah, I think he went like 13 under par or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I'd hope so. I think he saw his handicap was like 2 or something. So he is putting in the work on the course.
He was doing it while he was still under a football contract. But yeah, look.
Wait, it beats skiing. To be fair, Manuel Neuer.
Yeah. But that I think we've speculated that might have also been the reason why he had like those back injuries or whatnot, or those hamstring injuries like from golf. So who knows? You know what though? Before we get into the PSG Bayern game, you know there's actually 2 other interesting fixtures this week in Europe. One which should be a Champions League fixture, and one which is interesting on paper at least.
Yeah, it's kind of
what two am I referring to?
Well, it's United Barca.
And what's the other one?
Is the first one. Is it another Europa League tie?
Yep. They're second in the Bundesliga.
Oh yeah, Union. Who are Union playing?
Ajax. I know Ajax aren't doing that well, but it's still Ajax.
But that's a fascinating.
Yeah, like it's an interesting. It could be an interesting fixture. Like it would have been much more interesting if it was Ajax under Ten Hag. But even so, it's still interesting. But
yeah, I'll definitely give that a watch. But the Man United Barca, I think we actually need to talk little bit about that.
Let's get into that, and then we'll finish on the on the Champions League.
And that's perfect because I get to do a little bit of Serie A because there wasn't a Serie A team in those La Liga, sorry, and I get to do a little bit of La Liga now. But oh man, Barca, they
6
they
points
are now,
clear.
What 11 points?
Is it
only 6? I thought it was. I thought there were 8 before.
Maybe it's more.
You get the table up.
I'll get the table up
because obviously Real played in the Club World Cup and won that over the weekend, which I didn't get to watch any of, but. Yeah, but I definitely did watch Barca beat Villarreal 1-0 away. And again,
it's 11.
Did their solid act.
With one game.
It is 11
with one game more.
Game in hand. Huh. Yeah, one game more, yeah. But yeah, Barca away at Villarreal were pretty impressive, I must say. Solid again. Looking good with Kessie in next to De Jong. I always wonder if Xavi and Pep are just have constant dialogue about what they're going to do tactically, because Xavi used Frank Kessie in the first half exactly like Bernardo Silva was being used for Man City against Villa. He was sort of playing this holding midfielder, but they were encouraging Alex Balde to go and play really high as the wing back. So a lot of the time Kessie had to fill in at left back. But he did it well. I prefer the balance, obviously, of Kessie next to De Jong without Busquets there. I can understand that Busquets will still have a role for the rest of the season. I don't know how bad his injury was, but hopefully he's not right for the United side.
He's not good.
That's a bit harsh, but anyway, hopefully it's De Jong and Kessie in midfield against United, especially with United's sort of fluid diamond up front with those front four. I think they'll need that mobility in there. I guess the fact that he plays Alex Balde against Villarreal sort of tips us off to the fact that it might be Jordi Alba against United. I'm guessing. Ooh, I don't know how it works in the Europa League. Who has the home tie first and who has the away tie? Do you have it up there?
I will check.
Because obviously it's Champions League reject versus second place group, so
But
neither of these teams deserve to be rewarded.
it's at the Camp Nou first.
So Champions League reject gets it away from home at home first. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. But on the point of the Villarreal game,
Sabitz is also out, apparently. He's suspended.
oh really?
I'm guessing he's carrying over
Yeah, it must be.
a suspension from Bayern. Huh.
I guess, and while this is a pod where I'm giving out love for players who I haven't really loved, I guess I need to give out a bit of love to Christensen, who has been quite solid at Barcelona, and he's been the mainstay defender pretty much for the whole season. And while I can still point to the Champions League and say that's why I don't think he's a top level defender, he has been very adequate in La Liga this season, and like I say, has been the mainstay of the best defense in Europe, at least by goals conceded. So, but the Barcelona record is making more sense. Obviously, Ter Stegen's been a huge part of that, but Ronald Araujo was immense in this Villarreal game, and I can't wait for him to play against a Premier League team in Manchester United because
Against Rashford.
he is a player. Yeah, exactly, and against one of the informed Premier League players. Because Ronald Araujo looks built for the Premier League. I don't know if he'll leave Barca because he's built for anywhere, but physically he's fantastic. He would be an absolute beast in the Premier League.
I think just cutting you off. I think on FIFA 23 manager mode, I think Liverpool signed Araujo.
Arsenal signed him on mine, but they also sold Saka and Martinelli for some reason.
Dude, they sold Partey. In mine.
Yeah, weird going ons in FIFA for sure. But yeah, like I said, that, and the last point for Barca, I guess, is I'm loving where Pedri's playing now. So they're sort of playing a 3-4-3. They're playing it well, to be fair, even though I have my gripes with that formation. But Gavi and Pedri sort of fill in the spaces around Lewandowski. So obviously Lewandowski has someone, or at least two players to link up with. Rafinha's holding the width as sort of a right wing back, but not really, because when they lose the ball, it goes back into a sort of 4-4-2 more or less. Or when they have it, Rafinha's sort of that width out on the right. He's playing well. He always puts in a shift, to be fair. So it's good to simplify his role for him. But Pedri in his new position, I love him more advanced because he scored the winner against Villarreal. I think he scored the winner a few weeks back against Girona as well. So he's adding goals, and I asked that maybe a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. Like, I want to see the evolution of Pedri now because I think he is one of the world's best young players, and for that to happen, he needs to add a few more goals, a few more assists, and him playing in a more advanced position is helping him to do that. So that's fantastic to see. Not if you're a United fan, obviously. This is going to just be a colossal tie. They're both probably teams who we haven't seen the ceiling of yet, and it'll be interesting to see maybe if these games bring out a ceiling. But they're also teams who I think Barcelona are more adept at controlling the game, which is the thing that we've been saying is Man United's key deficiency. So that clash of styles and clash of what makes each team good will be interesting in itself, because Can United sort of repeat the Champions League trick on Barca, where a bit of too much dynamic movement and too much sort of vertical, being able to go back to front vertically sort of does Barcelona in? Because obviously Inter are a team who like to play that. Bayern, when they're on form, are one of the best teams at sort of cutting you open dynamically. So, and United probably a tie that Barcelona didn't want to see if we use that as evidence of what Barcelona do when they play against these kinds of teams. So Barca, while they have this huge lead at the top of La Liga, which is crazy to think when Real Madrid are your chief challenger, but they have a really big lead, but they still have question marks for me. So this is going to be a fascinating time. Would I be surprised if Barca went through? No. Would I be surprised if Man United went through? No. But if you pushed me for an answer, I think just talking it out, I think I've landed on, I think United for me.
You
will go
reckon?
through this tie. Yeah, yeah. In talking it out and just that fluid front four, I think worries me from the Barca perspective. Although it must also be said that they did not have Ronald Araujo for the Champions League group stage, so that could be all the difference in dealing with that dynamic sort of attack. So maybe in talking it out a bit more, maybe I trust Barca's ability to control the game and Robert Lewandowski's ability to be clinical. So. No, honestly, it's a 50-50 for me. If you pushed me, I don't even know anymore after talking it out a bit more. Like, it is, this one's just straight down the middle for me.
Yeah, I think now, like, you know, a couple of months ago when this fixture was first released, like, Man United weren't on form at all. We're like, okay, Barca, like, even though Barca
They were
weren't.
starting to get there, man. You know,
Yeah,
but they weren't where they are now.
Yeah, and we were just like, Barca's going to blow them out of the water. Like, this is a perfect tie for them. Now it's like, yeah, it's pretty much closer to a 50-50. And the fact that Barca, I guess, play... They try to play a similar style to City, Arsenal, maybe not necessarily Liverpool, but Liverpool do, at least back from last season, they were a lot more dominant on the ball. And Man United have beaten all three of those teams this season. At home as well. Playing the same way, trying to, absorbing pressure, playing on the counter. So, maybe they know how to play against this sort of team that likes to control possession, likes to dictate the play. So maybe it does favour them a little bit more, especially on that Camp Nou pitch where it's a lot bigger and there's a lot more space for Rashford to run in behind.
Yeah, no, I think 50. Yeah, if you push me, it'll be United for all those reasons that we said. But my big hesitancy is Ronald Araujo in this team because I truly think he's that much of a difference maker and he's that good. So. I'm just excited for this tie because, like we said, in fact, I'm more excited for this European tie than any other European tie. And the only game that is going to upstage it this midweek is obviously Arsenal against City. So, like, it's funny that we've got this amount of games in the midweek. Yeah.
There is so many good games happening. Bloody hell!
And let's hope this is the start of good football again. Please, let's hope this is when we see it.
Well, you know what? Like, I was talking to my dad yesterday, and like he asked me like, how's things going over here? Like, how's the weather and all this stuff? I'm like, it's actually getting a little bit warmer, and like, you can sense that spring is starting to come because like the sun is no longer down at like 4:30 in the afternoon. Like now it's like 5:30, 6 o'clock, like when the sunlight starts to go away. So like. And also during the day, it's like, 10 to 15 degrees as well. It's not like, 0 degrees, around midday. So, yeah, maybe it is that sort of start, like the how, like when a wheel is stuck and like for it to get like momentum, it needs to like chug, it needs to like get a couple of rotations through before it starts to fully, go. Maybe this is like, these weeks leading up into like the beginning to middle of March, that's the wheel just getting greased up and getting ready to start going, into like 6,000 RPM or whatever.
Let's hope so. I love that analogy, but let's hope so. I'll complete the La Liga wrap because sort of Bilbao is still sort of like lingering around 6 points behind Atleti. Atleti get a really hard fought win. Who were they playing? I forget. I think it was I don't know. But they were a man down and they get a last-minute Memphis Depay winner to win that game. And it was Celta, that's right. Celta probably should have beaten them. They had Jan Oblak fingertip save like right off the edge of the line. Like one more roll and it was over the line. Iago Aspas hit the post with a free kick after Savic was sent off. Yeah, but they're clinging on. They still look like my favourites to finish fourth. I know Sociedad played this morning. I think they won. But I obviously haven't had a chance to watch that game yet. But yeah, Bilbao sort of clinging on 6 points behind. I love the Muniain and Sanset as the two midfielders in front of Vesga. But yeah, for me, Oyan Sanset looks like a player also built for the Premier League. I wouldn't mind seeing him at Liverpool because he's kind of For me, he is a less physical Sergei Milinkovic-Savic. He'll make mistakes. He's not always perfect, but he'll always try and do things that affect a goal or affect the game. And he can play as a 10, but I prefer him more as an 8, a bit more box to box. He's quite physical, obviously, if you're putting him in a Milinkovic-Savic sort of class. And yeah, has an eye for goal. He scored a hat-trick the other week. So, yeah, Bilbao are looking much better with that as their midfield. They still worry me at the back. Still very shaky there, but we're able to get a 2-1 win over Valencia away. Valencia, let's not talk about their problems because they are in a relegation battle now, which is scary for them. Betis also get a win on the weekend. And a player who I am loving, I think he's probably been Betis' best player if you want to put Borja Iglesias, the striker, up there. You could, although he's gone a bit cold recently. But Sergio Canales, once obviously of Real Madrid, I think he was the player that Jose Mourinho pinpointed for much criticism in his time there for no reason. Apparently, I don't know why. But he looks fantastic for Betis, and I think he looks... If Newcastle were to hold on and get Champions League, even Europa League, but if they were to get Champions League, I think he'd be a perfect Joe Willock upgrade. I know his age might concern Newcastle off going for that profile of player, but I just think for the role that he could play, I just think he'd be a better Joe Willock. And he's such a good technical player. Scored a goal in the week, a really good goal as well. Just lobbed it over the keeper. So Betis also, I think, are only 4 points behind Atleti. Rayo Vallecano, who are sort of putting a push up, but Villarreal have fallen off a cliff there, obviously losing against Barca. And just to finish up on the Atleti point, and this is a question I want to ask you because he's your boy predominantly, but I was thinking Atletico's main deficiency here, and obviously I like Jimenez at the back, but I never liked the partner, whether it be Hermoso, whether it be Savic. And I'm just thinking, well, what centre-back could you go out and maybe clog up that defence? And I was just thinking, Josko Guardiola is, for me, somewhat a perfect Atletico centre-back under Simeone. I think he'd learn a lot of good stuff under Simeone. Not good stuff, but good for a centre-back. And I think he could be a sort of Diego Godin replacement, maybe, because he's the player you watch Atletico. And what's different from the heyday of Atletico? Well, for me, it's that guy. Diego Godin was such a big part of that. I know Guardiola might set his sights a little bit higher, but I think in terms of the managers you can work with, Diego Simeone would be a pretty perfect one for Guardiola to work with, if he's still there. I must also say that.
I think your point where, based on his progression, and especially based on his World Cup showing, it almost feels like he has the pick of the litter. Like he can go to Real Madrid if they are interested. Like he can just go there. He can go to Liverpool, which I've said numerous times. That's one of his preferred Premier League options. He can go to City, Chelsea as well. Apparently they're rumored with everyone. I think lately they've been rumored with Osimhen. They're ready to give 120 mil for him in the summer. So
they better be. He's worth it. He's worth more than that.
Yeah,
he's so good.
Well, in terms of, like, you have a point that in terms of him becoming a better defender and a better player.
Remember as well, age is on his side. This doesn't have to be his final big club move.
Yeah, I know.
This could be a stepping stone as well, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why it sort of lines up for me.
Yeah, in terms of development, because Simeone... All right, for instance, I've mentioned a couple of times that I believe that João Felix has been stunted under Simeone and that he would develop better under Arsenal's system, the way that Arsenal want to play. Because I watched him a couple of times for Benfica, and it looked like the type of player that he is would suit the way Arsenal tries to play. And possibly now, these 6 months under Potter at Chelsea, maybe he develops better as well compared to Simeone's system. So from a defensive standpoint, yeah, Guardiola would see much better development than what João Felix has seen, because Simeone is a defensive-minded coach. Whereas if he went, for instance, to City, he would learn positioning and ball playing a lot better. If he went to Liverpool, he'd learn probably more one-on-one defending a lot better. So it depends what he needs in his arsenal, in his book.
Yeah, I'd love to. I think for me, it's more what Simeone offers. Although, if Guardiola is a choice, you pretty much pick Guardiola every time because his clubs are more likely to be successful as well. But for me, it's the discipline sort of aspect. Because sometimes, I know my big rap on Guardiola, especially like in previous seasons, was he's a back three centre back, and he's definitely outshone that now. He's definitely can be one of the two, but he still does make mistakes. And obviously he's young, and for a centre-back, he's very young as well. But I think Simeone gives you that sort of discipline to defend your box a little bit with more diligence. And I think just for a few years, maybe that's all it is. But to learn that would be invaluable for me, because then I don't think his physicality means for me, he doesn't really have a problem in defending progressively. His distribution is fantastic as well. He can take the ball past an opponent if he needs. So in terms of slotting back into... And look, I've got to say this as well. Since the World Cup and since that break, Atletico haven't been like a crazy defensive team. Simeone will always ask his players to work hard defensively. That's fine. There's no problem. But they haven't been the Atletico of the later stages of the Champions League where they're just defending their box. It's not that at all. So like, I don't want to discredit Atleti and Simeone just by saying that's all they do, but I think he could learn those things under Simeone just for a few years. And it was just one that was interesting me. And it was one of those like jigsaw piece ones. It's like, well, he fits the need for Atleti, and for him, I think it would be a really good move. So it was just one that interests me. But I think now it's we can finish with the beautiful cherry on top.
Just quickly, And Atleti have shown that they are willing to splash 100 mil plus on a player. Because João Felix was was he 140?
No, I think Euros it might have been like 125, 130. But like,
I know he was over 100.
Atleti's spending is definitely underrated because they went through the Thomas Lemar phase as well. I think they dropped 60 on him. So yeah, they would be willing to spend, and well, it would be interesting to see if they're willing to spend. Maybe COVID's hit them a little harder in recent seasons and not winning anything for a while. So, but yeah, just a fascinating one, and I'm guessing is this the nice place to finish on? At least names wise, is the perfect Champions League tie. But we'll go into why it might not be in reality.
Yeah, let's get into it. The Farmers League tie.
Yeah, and thankfully there's not too much to report from these two leagues. Let's start with PSG. Who are still top of the league. I don't know what to make of PSG at the moment because they lose. I think it was 3-1 in the end to Monaco. Could have been more, to be fair. And the thing is, you looked at the team and the Ligue 1 coverage over here on the initial team sheet. If a player has come mid-season, if they don't have like that recording of the player like standing to do the starting 11, they just put this like grey mannequin in a PSG shirt, like as the player who's there. And PSG had like 3 of those players in the starting 11, like youngsters from the youth academy. It's just like, and you look at the team sheet, it's like Monaco will win this game. Like I know it says PSG on paper, but this PSG team does not really stand a chance for me against Monaco. They had Neymar in the starting 11. They had Donnarumma. They had Marquinhos. And that was about it. Like, Vitinha was in there. Do you consider Vitinha really any kind of difference maker? Not really. So, like, in terms of what they have, they don't have much at the moment. And Mbappe is expected to still be injured for this tie. They're coming in wretched form. They've played 3 good teams since the World Cup in Ligue 1, and they've lost to them all. And they also lost to Marseille in the Cup last midweek, and they're now out of the Coupe de France as well. So any good team PSG has had to play since the World Cup, even half good team, because this is Ligue 1 we're talking about. This isn't even the Premier League. We're talking about Lens, who have fallen off a cliff. RIP to my boys Lens. They're now 4th. Monaco have jumped them in 3rd, which I'm happy about. Marseille are now chief challengers in Ligue 1. So, and Marseille were pretty impressive in the midweek where they knocked PSG out of the cup. But to be fair, that was just PSG, which at least they had Messi in that game. They had the strongest team they could line up, but they were outworked by Marseille in that game. And yeah, PSG, man, is it a ruse? Are they just going to name a really strong team for the Bayern? I don't think so. I think Mbappe is actually injured. I think Neymar is nowhere near the club. Like, he is there in body only. His spirit has drifted away to God knows where. Probably his sister's birthday. He's already thinking about it. I know I make the joke every time, but honestly, like that's the key moment for me. If Neymar pisses off for his sister's birthday again, then we know he's completely checked out. He looks completely checked out at the moment, man. He is having no influence on these games. He's making stupid tackles. Like in this game against Monaco, he just lashed out, I think, at one of the central midfielders. It might have been Fofana. You probably could have seen a red for it, to be quite honest, because he definitely wasn't going for the ball in any way, shape, or form. He looks like he kind of wants to get sent off every week and doesn't want to deal with this shit. Messi looked like he had a bit of World Cup glow for a week or two after the World Cup. Ever since then, like, I know he was instrumental in the win last weekend. I forget who they beat, but they won 3-1. It might have been Toulouse at home. And he was instrumental in that, and he popped up with his Messi moments. But honestly, like, if this PSG goes into this tie with Bayern, and Bayern I have my own criticisms about, and we'll get to them, but I don't give PSG a singular chance in hell. Honestly, if Mbappe's injured, and if Mbappe's not right for the second leg, it might not even matter. They might have been blown out of the water in the first leg. I know they're at home in the first leg, but if Bayern come with the intensity you expect Bayern to come with, even though, yes, they have their deficiencies, but they could really blow PSG out of the water because Marquinhos is in terrible form. And this is the guy, for recent seasons, we've widely regarded at least one of the three best centre-backs in the world. He's not having any influence on games. He's actually making mistakes in games. Sergio Ramos, I don't know. Can you blame it on him? We probably expected him to be a bit better. He hasn't been very good himself. Hakimi and Mendes as your full. It'll be interesting to see what formation he uses. He might go three at the back with Kimpembe sort of being back as well, and that limits how many central midfielders you have to play because we know PSG's midfield isn't good. I don't know. Maybe he can stitch together a good enough team, but Messi and Neymar, I don't know. Like what I've seen in recent weeks, I don't really give them a chance of getting through this tie. But I must also add, what we've seen in recent weeks might not be the real PSG. They might just name a really strong team for the tie, and they might just look like the PSG who were pre-World Cup and might be a bit better. But until I see it, I can't expect that. So what I expect right now, with what I've seen, is Bayern just trouncing PSG, to be quite honest, because PSG are all over the place.
And you know what? Like, Bayern have that in them to go to one of these places, like one of these, like, what's supposedly supposed to be like fortresses or whatnot, or like a really good team, like a 5-star team, and just absolutely smash them. Like, they've done it to Barca a couple of times in the last couple of seasons, where they just like put like 5 or 7 goals past them. So like, PSG aren't in the greatest form. They're missing Mbappe, Neymar, mentally probably missing. PSG don't have a midfield. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a blowout, in all honesty.
Yeah, I think the point on the matchup is a really good one, because if PSG were playing nearly any other team in Europe, maybe only Napoli, you would say, well, they'll at least be competitive. Like, it shouldn't be a blowout. And then if you're competitive and you have Leo Messi on the pitch, then that might be enough, because he can just pop up with a moment, and that's enough to get you through. But in this tie, Bayern, I'm not saying they will, but Bayern definitely have the ability to just blow you away, because the front four or whatever they use on the weekend against Bochum at home, they sort of went to a 5-3-2, but they only played Goretzka as the only midfielder, because Sane and Musiala were kind of playing as 2 8s. in front of it, but they're so offensively minded. Can you really classify them as central midfielders? But yeah, like therein is the point. Alphonso Davies, I don't think started this game. It was, I think, Cancelo out there. But you think of all that attacking threat. If they do want to play that way in a 5-3-2, and just sort of Nagelsmann wants to, I don't think Nagelsmann sort of falls into the Inzaghi category for me, like the Simone Inzaghi category, where I don't think he's a particularly good attacking coach. He just puts more attacking players on the pitch and sort of doubles down on that sort of stuff. So if they want to play that way, De Ligt as one of the wide centre-backs sort of worries me, or Upamecano if it is him. That still worries me. But if Neymar's not mentally there, does it worry you? Because what's he going to do if he's not actually checked into the game? And obviously no Mbappe is huge, because if Mbappe was playing in this tie, there's no way I'd be saying PSG don't have a chance. And I'm still not saying they don't have a chance. But from what I've seen, like if Mbappe was playing, it's like, well, at least they have him. He'll at least get the better of Upamecano and De Ligt once or twice in this game, or Pavard even. So, but yeah, if I want to play with that dynamic, those two central midfielders running, the wing backs joining in, especially when you think that the wing backs are Cancelo and Alphonso Davies. Thomas Muller's starting to score a few goals as well. That's the only worry for me for Bayern, because I guess the fact that PSG go into this game without Mbappe sort of takes my fear of Bayern's defence out of it a little bit more. But my fear is still, how clinical can they be? Because it's Choupo-Moting and Muller up front, or it's Muller and it's not a striker, basically. It's not a goal-scoring striker. So it might be the case of, do they create heaps of chances and not finish them, and then the messy moments come into effect again? That could be the case, or it could be the case that they do take a few of their chances and they blow PSG away. But yeah, it's hard to analyse. It's hard to predict what's going to go in to this game, particularly on the PSG side. The Bayern side, I think, is more settled. It'll just be interesting to see if he does go this variance of a 5 at the back with João Cancelo in there now, or if he does go the 4-2-3-1 with Kimmich and Goretzka holding. My only thing is, I'll say, while Bayern are infinitely better in terms of personnel in the midfield, they're still not a team who control the game and press home that midfield advantage. They're still a team who like to go vertical, like to go back to front very quickly. They want to attack you dynamically. They don't want to keep possession of the ball, keep you there, make any sort of advantage in midfield tell. They're much more... They're a team a bit like United, but with better players. They don't control the game. They play this sort of up and down, and that's why their defense gives me pause for concern, because if you play that style, you need your defenders to be really good. And for me, De Ligt has not solved all the problems, and Upamecano we've already talked about. Jan Sommer hasn't filled me with confidence since he's come into Bayern. So Bayern have enough question marks for this to be a tie, but PSG just have so many more question marks that I can't even predict how they'll come into this. So it's exciting to watch because of the ramifications for each of these teams. When one of them gets knocked out at the round of 16, that is a big failure for each of these clubs, and I expect it to be PSG on what we've seen. So it's interesting from that perspective. But this is the time we sort of thought would be the highest quality football that we were probably going to see going into the round of 16. I don't sit there anymore. So, but for the stakes, it's going to be fascinating.
I think we predicted that before the World Cup when PSG were flying. Bayern, after Mane's injury, stopped flying.
No, Bayern were really good going into the World Cup, remember? I think they were winning like 4 or 5 nils and stuff.
Didn't they drop off like the last 2 or 3 games? They like drew those ones? They didn't win. They drew
3 in a row when they came back from the World Cup. And they did that earlier in the season as well. Yeah. I think they were winless in 4. They have these runs in them.
Yeah. But speaking of Mane, apparently he's not going to play in this one, but apparently he might be ready for the second leg. I just checked.
So he might be in the Mbappe boat, I guess. Yeah. And that is a positive, because I think they'll have the best part of a month between the ties.
Yeah. But all in all, yeah, it should be It should be an interesting tie, but not as interesting as what we first predicted when the tie was announced. Unfortunately.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. If it was these two teams at that point, that would have been really fun.
Yeah.
Maybe it still will be. Maybe they've been just keeping it all. And Bayern have been terrible. I am very harsh on Bayern, and they're still free flowing. They worry me for the reasons I said.
Yeah, but let's see how it goes. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I like I said earlier. I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of those typical Bundesliga romps where it's like 5 or 6-0. Like the Bayern.
Not at the Parc de France. That's crazy.
I told you I wouldn't be surprised if that happens.
Yeah, I wouldn't put a 3 or a 4 past them. I would go that far.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of those romps, you know. But do you think this is a perfect way to sort of end on the Super League? Just a quick 5 minutes on it.
Yeah, quick 5 minutes. We can do it.
Because look, there wasn't really too much added to it. They did mention apparently up like a league or a couple of leagues of up to 80 teams. So 80 teams. So I'm guessing maybe. But then they said a minimum of 14 games played. And also the teams that would be entering into this Super League, they wouldn't leave the domestic competitions. So that's also something that's different. And there's also promotion and relegation. So the way that it's presented now, it's almost like a direct competitor to the Champions League alone. Rather than
the Champions League,
rather than a direct competitor to the national leagues and the Champions League combined. So yeah, it's now essentially the Champions League repackaged, but it's like the Champions League with the Europa League with the Conference League, because like if there's going to be 80 teams and you basically have, let's say, 20 teams per, so you have like your first division, second division, third, fourth. Then you have, let's say, the top 3 or top 4 get promoted and relegated and whatnot from the bottom and whatnot. Then it's slightly different where, you know how only the winner of the Europa League gets an automatic spot in the Champions League. This is now like the top 3 or top 4 get promoted into the first division, so technically get promoted into the Champions League. I don't know how they're going to divvy it up in terms of how many teams get into the first division or whatnot, but I don't know, like based on what they've changed, and yeah, teams are going to stay in their domestic competitions. What's your thoughts on the Super League now?
Well, it's more stomachable because they said that there's no guaranteed placeholders, so that suggests that you can get relegated out of the Super League. It still doesn't. I don't understand why they've come out with. Oh, I do, because they want to control. They basically want to be they basically want to be the European Premier League so that they can start bringing in that kind of money, really. So they want to pretty much do away with the Champions League by just installing their own version of the Champions League.
One that they control.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, whatever, that is what it is. But for me, like, the big thing is I think if you're going to enter into a European Super League, just leave your domestic leagues. Like, Europe is such an easy place to get around. You just don't need to play in your domestic league anymore. You can play against the best clubs in Europe week in, week out at your level, which is, I know I'm going to be unpopular for saying this and it's hugely elitist, but that's what I'd prefer to be watching. I'd prefer to be watching the best teams in Europe play against each other every week rather than having to wait however many months we've had to wait for the Champions League to finally come back. And even now we're in the Champions League and we're lamenting the fact that some of the best clubs in Europe aren't in the Champions League. So yeah, I just prefer it to be a system where they leave their domestic leagues. Again, I don't know if it would be better for the domestic leagues. It definitely won't be better revenue-wise, but it will give historical clubs a chance to win the Premier League and get promoted into the Super League. So I think that would be fun to watch in its own right. And now your teams like Brentford, Brighton, maybe Everton, if they get their shit together, they could be challenging for league titles. I know they're somewhat Mickey Mouse league titles because the bigger teams have left, but You know what? I just prefer to be watching the bigger teams play against each other week in, week out. I'd prefer a place where all the best players had all their stats combined because they played against the same opponents every week. So now when I'm talking about Victor Osimhen scoring 15 goals, it's like it doesn't come with, yeah, but it's in the Serie A or, yeah, it's in Liga. And it's like, no, they're all playing in the same league. So the best striker in this league is the best striker in the world. It's easy to come up with. There's no qualifiers. So, yeah, for my sanity and for my viewing pleasure, I'd much prefer that system. But, yeah, this is such a non-point for me because it's basically, yeah, we're just going to do the Champions League. It's like, well, great. Yeah, cool. Like, that's what you're trying to do. Sweet. But, like, there hasn't been a groundswell for teams to leave the Champions League yet, except for obviously those founding members of the Super League who I know it's mainly Juve, Barca, and Real Madrid who are pushing it mainly, but I still suspect that every club is still involved in one way or another.
Well, I think the biggest problem is that didn't the UK Parliament or English Parliament, didn't they actually pass into law that the teams can't play in like they can't play in like breakaway leagues, like they need to like play in their domestic league. So like you can't have an English team not like playing in the European Super League or something. Did that I don't know, mate. Did you see that, or was that something that was rumored?
I don't know. It was probably Gary Neville who was petitioning at Parliament to get that done.
But look, I don't know where I'm at with, because like I can see your argument in terms of, especially the argument where you mentioned that like you remove that, oh, he's only playing in the Bundesliga or he's playing in Ligue 1, so like those 20 goals are worth 10 Premier League goals or whatever. Like it removes that argument. I guess the logistics and the kinks need to be worked out to make it, I guess, like an open Super League. Because, for instance, like let's say you have that. Let's say you have just one division, like what was originally planned, and then like 3 teams go down, but like those 3 teams are like all German teams, and you win the Premier League expecting to, get your play. Then like.
That's one for the logistical minds out there like, to solve, but I can't solve that right now. That's where I got to with my whole proposal of changing it. To, like when it gets down to that point, then it's real nitty gritty.
Like that's because the way that it's proposed, the second proposal now, it's like I think it works the same way. Like you qualify based on your league position in your domestic league, and then you get put into like the European Super League Division 1, European Super League Division 2.
I'm sure we have something that exists like that. Oh yeah, it's the Champions League and the Europa League and the Conference League.
Yeah. But you know
it's like the same thing.
But you know,
especially because the Champions League's like changing so that teams are guaranteed more games as well.
Yeah, like 2 extra games or something. But you know what I was thinking? Like, what about changing the Champions League back to what it actually was before, where it's like the actual champions play in the Champions League. You don't have the runners-up and the 3rd and 4th place playing. Like they get into they play in the
evil genius.
They play in the Europa League the way they used to play. And then
boomer.
But then you know what else they used to have? They used to have the European Cup Winners' Cup. So I think that was like the teams that won the FA Cup, the teams that won
of course.
So that would then I guess incentivize teams to actually try and win the FA Cup and the Italian Cup and whatnot. Because I think I even mentioned it before. Like, what about instead of giving the FA Cup winner a Europa League spot, why not give them a Champions League spot and then give the Carabao Cup winner a Europa League spot? How about changing that one? Like,
let's go back to the days. Cup winners' cups. European Cup, champions only.
Yeah. The glory days and like Steaua Bucharest are winning it and shit.
Yeah, we'll get those stupid results when, I don't know, Man City are playing Apoel from Cyprus or some shit in the quarterfinals of the Champions League.
Look, I
Hey,
think
Applewell actually did make the quarterfinals, didn't they? I think in like 2010 or something.
I'm pretty sure they did make the knockouts. But look, I don't know. I think there's a way to develop football, and I guess these guys are trying to develop the financial side of it so that clubs get more of the money. Because, for instance, I think I mentioned it. You get more money for playing in the Premier League than playing in the Champions League. So
you do. That's the exact point.
Yeah,
that is why they're doing it.
Yeah, because most of that money is actually staying with UEFA. However, I'm then curious to ask or to find out, like, what does UEFA do with all that money? Do they then reinvest it into grassroots? Because I can tell you here, all the clubs that need fucking money from UEFA, they ain't getting shit. like if they were getting UEFA money, like there'd be like 1,000-seater stadiums, 5,000-seater stadiums, around and stuff like that. Like this stadium that's like the club that was here in my city, 10 years ago they played in the Croatian First Division. This stadium is a piece of shit. Like, I think it's like
it's UEFA's fault.
No, but like, where's that money? Where's that money going? It's not going to.
We can't open up that dialogue at 2 hours 15. We could be here forever.
Yeah, I think it's something for another day, and maybe something that like we need to look into so we can actually see how much revenue is actually coming into UEFA and where it's being spent.
Dodgy UEFA.
Yeah. Anyway, Caleb, it's been a pleasure. There's some really good midweek games coming up, really good ones.
I have a feeling we're not gonna forego doing a late week pod this week. We'll definitely be back to talk about.
Yeah,
because otherwise early next week we'll go for like 4 hours if we have to hold on to all the stuff we've seen.
Yeah, we'll do it Tuesday.
I'm putting it 100%. We're coming back.
We're going to do it either Thursday night straight after the Barca game, or Friday. We'll see. We'll work it out. We'll work out the logistics.
We'll be back. We'll be back for a second one.
So
keep posted. Turn on that bell. Like, subscribe, comment, all the good stuff.
All the good stuff. And guys, thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for coming, and bye for now.